Hey everybody, as Ken said, I'm Brian Rollins and I'm the Jira Group Product Manager, which means I get to be responsible for the Jira, Greenhopper, and Bonfire, the whole Jira family. And today I'm going to talk about actually growing with Jira. And so at some point in time we all started with Jira, and I want to talk about how Jira grows over time, how it starts inside of an organization, how you get started, how it expands to more teams, how it expands across the entire organization, and even how it becomes a standard. And so at some point in time, probably all of us in this room, since we're in the Jira State of the Union, we got started with Jira. For me, it was 8 years ago when I first became a Jira customer. And when I get to talk to most Jira customers, I actually like to ask, where Jira started in your organization. So for all of you who are out there, how many of you did Jira start in one team in your organization before it spread to a lot of other teams? Started with one team, it's awesome. I also like to ask where specifically, like where exactly did Jira start in your organization? And the most common answer is under my desk. And then Jira grew from there. You were a small team, you were trying to get things started, you were trying to organize, you're actually trying to do your work, and so you picked Jira. And the second question that I like to ask is actually, why did you pick Jira? And the most common response is, well, it just worked. So at this point in time in a team, you're actually trying to move quickly, you're trying to move efficiently. And our goal inside of Jira is to help you with that. And so starting in Jira 4.3, we introduced packaged installers for Jira. So you could actually get a Jira instance up and running as quickly as possible. And in the last year, we introduced on-demand. So you can actually create a hosted instance of Jira in the cloud in just a few minutes. Now Jira 5.1, which we released in beta just 2 weeks ago, and actually today we have the release candidate available. So our first release candidate is part of our early access program. And so all the features that I'll talk about today in Jira 5.1, you can actually download and check out for yourself. And the generally available release will be in just a short time coming after this. So in Jira 5.1, we actually even made it easier for teams to get started. And so a very simple but really powerful change is actually the new Jira welcome screen. It makes sure that when you start up with Jira, you do the most important first task, and that's actually to create a project. Another really small but simple change that we added that actually had a huge effect was actually auto-suggesting project keys. So you get your first project started and you build a project key. Now for a bunch of us, we've created 10 projects, we've created 100 projects. It may not be a big deal, but our data in on-demand actually shows that this is making teams up to 9 times faster, this and other changes, in actually getting started and becoming efficient with Jira. And we've made it a lot easier to get started with Jira if you're coming from another issue tracker. So both in our download version and in on-demand, we support out-of-the-box importers for all the major issue trackers. And if you're dealing with a legacy issue tracker, we actually have a CSV file import that can help you as well. But now, if you're a large organization, these importers can help too. If you're actually getting to the point where you're standardizing on Jira, and you may have multiple different issue trackers across your organization, you should definitely take a look at the Jira importers to see if you can actually pull all those legacy issue trackers as you're trying to standardize on Jira. And as you saw in Scott's keynote this morning, we're trying to make it better and better for new end users who are joining and using Jira. You saw the great things we've done with the create dialog in Jira. And inline edit is our next step in trying to make Jira as easy as possible for all of your users, so that you can inline edit any field and that all actions and transitions can be done without a page reload. So we've built an incredibly efficient way to edit issues in Jira, but again, without sacrificing any of the power or the flexibility, which was one of the big reasons that many teams chose Jira to begin with. And we've made it easier to roll it out to your team. So in Jira 5.1, we've added the ability to actually invite users. You just simply type in a set of email addresses, and Jira will actually send all those people an email that they can actually create their own Jira account. Now, I actually have my own personal Jira instance, and I invited my wife to join our personal instance, and she refused. So Jira may not be great at actually managing your marriage, but for everything else, I think it does a pretty good job. And beyond that, once you begin to use Jira, you're trying to customize it. So it's with the workflows and the projects, so it actually matches the needs of your team. We've made that first workflow editing experience even better in Jira 5.1, so that when you go to edit your first workflow, Jira now automatically copies that workflow scheme and the default workflow, so you can begin editing immediately without even having to understand what an issue type mapping or a scheme is. Now, if you're an advanced user, there's still all that power available to you with Jira configuration. But our goal here is not just to make it faster for admins. We want to make sure that first Jira administrator is excited about rolling it out to the rest of their team. And so that's why we want to make it easier and easier for new Jira instances. But getting started is not just limited to Jira. So as you also got to see in Scott's keynote this morning, we've made it incredibly easy to get started with Greenhopper, whether you're using Kanban, Scrum, or whatever your flavor of Agile is. So pretty quickly, as that first team in your organization started to use Jira and began to be successful, other people began to say, hey, what is that? How can I use that? Maybe somebody saw a dashboard that you've created and said, how can we create one of those for our particular team? But as it grew to other teams, you needed to find a way to actually communicate and collaborate effectively with all of your other teammates. As it began to be used by more teams or more people inside of your team, simply put, you needed to find a way to get work done with each other in a more and more effective manner. Well, shares and mentions were designed to do exactly that. None of us, not even developers, work alone. If you're working on a story, you may need to talk to the product owner or the product manager about the story as you're working on it. Or maybe you're trying to fix a bug that a QA engineer reported. And so you need to bring those people into the conversation. But you want to do that as easily as possible. And so let's actually take a look at how shares and mentions work on a daily basis. So Penny's just received an issue that's been assigned to her. So she goes in and clicks on the issue. And she immediately recognizes, hey, this is a regression. We've broken something in the past. Now, she thinks Scott might be responsible because he was working on some code in this area just last week. So she adds a comment, but she specifically mentions Scott. And she's got the ability to actually autocomplete Scott either by his email address, his username, or his full name. But this is pulling Scott into the conversation inside of Jira. And so Scott will get an email notification that he's been mentioned in this issue, and he can come in and actually comment on the issue. But Penny wants to go beyond that. She wants to make sure the entire QA team is on the lookout for these additional issues. So she basically shares the issue with the rest of her QA team. And she can do that not just with Jira users, but really with any mailing list you have in your organization. So that way you can mention someone specific to bring them into the conversation, but also share broadly to make sure everybody understands what's going on inside of this issue. So mentions, pull people in, shares, great for an FYI, make sure people pay attention. And everyone on our team gets an email from Jira saying, hey, this is something you need to know about. You should check out this issue. So now, as more and more people on your team are using Jira, they may be using other applications as well. They're using Confluence. You've got product managers who are authoring specifications. You've got developers who may be working on builds in Bamboo. And you've got other applications that are actually integrated into Jira. So how do you keep track of all that information across your team? Well, that's exactly what activity streams were designed for. But prior to Jira 5, activity streams really just showed you activity stream information for Jira. You can now have an activity stream that integrates activities from Jira, Confluence, Bamboo, the whole Atlassian suite, and other applications integrated to Jira, which can include plugins and even remote applications that use REST APIs. So more and more making sure you can stay up to date with everything going on in your team. As your team gets bigger, that could be a lot of information, right? So you can basically pull in and then filter so you only see the events you care about, maybe just for your team, maybe for a specific project. And that way activity streams can actually give you a way to keep up to date with everything that's going on with your extended team. Now, as Scott also talked about in the keynote, dogfooding is more and more common across organizations. And not everyone's going to understand the way that your particular Jira project is configured. They're not going to understand maybe how you use the fixed version field. I had 2 or 3 conversations yesterday about, well, we use the fixed version field to mean it's been fixed. And other people say, well, we mean it to use it's when it should be fixed. And so you may have different processes and different ways you approach Jira. And not everyone in your whole organization is going to understand those. So, people on your development team, they may understand how to submit an issue in the right way in Jira. But you may have people in your organization who, they don't understand which project to use, they don't understand what issue type to use. And, have you ever gotten an issue that looks like this? The web page does not work in my browser, and they've given us some detail to basically help us get to a conclusion and resolve it. Yeah, so what do we do about this? Well, this is essentially where Bonfire comes in. And so with Bonfire, we want to help users throughout your organization create issues that are not only easy for them to create, but that have rich annotated screenshots and all the information that as your average user they're going to leave out like browser and resolution and things like that. So this lets everybody in your organization create issues that you're actually going to be able to triage and actually do something with. So what does this look like? Well, take, for instance, you've got a website in your organization that you're about to launch, but you want to make sure that it's ready to go. So maybe an example would be the Atlassian Summit website. So Ken, in marketing, he wanted to make sure that everybody took a look at it in the San Francisco office, even finance. We were going to have a look at this website, make sure the ones and zeros and the decimal points were all in the right place. And so he set up a test session in Bonfire to do what we call at Atlassian a Blitz Test. It's a focused hour of testing and just examination of a website or a web application. So Ken built a test session in Bonfire, and now he wants to invite Matt, one of the other members of the team in San Francisco, to join this test session. So all he does is from the Bonfire test session, he invites Matt. So now Matt gets a simple email that says, hey, come join the testing. It's really easy for Matt because he just clicks on the email, and he can see the Bonfire test session. Now the Bonfire test session has got instructions around what we want him to do. So clicks a button, and he's joined the session. And now everyone who else joins the session know, hey, Matt's in there testing as well too. And now to start testing, Matt just clicks on the URL, and that takes him to the website we want to test. Now Matt's really fast, so he sees the problem immediately, and he opens Bonfire. And he already has at his hands this rich set of annotation tools, so he can actually pinpoint exactly what the problem is. He doesn't have to worry about how he describes it in words. It's like having a set of color crayons where you just get to show exactly what the problem is and point that out to the people who have the issue. In addition, we've already defaulted the project and the issue type and what other fields you want to default for this particular Bonfire test session. So he doesn't have to worry about any of those other fields. We've made it incredibly easy for him to create an issue. So after our hour-long test of people creating issues, now Ken has a full backlog of everything that's been found by the team. And he can see it by browser, and he can drill down and actually use the Jira query language to go even further. Because all the data that Bonfire captures are actually stored as custom fields in Jira. So you can actually do subqueries to say, well, show me the issues that were found with Chrome. Now, of course, it's more likely that IE has more problems than other browsers. But as you dive into a particular issue, you can actually see, again, the rich annotated screenshot and all of the metadata that Bonfire captured for the particular issue. So again, Bonfire is the best way to actually create issues really for any website or any web application, especially as you broaden beyond your centralized team. So we've got shares and mentions, we've got activity streams, and we've got Bonfire, really trying to help everyone collaborate, trying to help everyone work together. Essentially, these are social features, but not social in terms of what you and I typically think of in terms of social networking. I hope this is not news to you, but Jira is not there to actually help you collect friends who you don't really know. It's not there to help you get dates. That was the point of MySpace, I think. It's not there actually to help you share cute cat pictures. And it's not even there to help unite you with your unusual affinity group of ice fishing people. Now, I grew up in Alaska, so I actually happen to like ice fishing. But the whole idea behind these features is collaboration. It's getting you to work together. It's helping you pull people into the conversation. It's making sure that you're aware of everything you need to do and that I need to do my job. And as more and more of the company is involved in software, that's really the social network that matters to us, because it's about getting your work done, it's about making your customers successful, and it's about shipping products. And we want to make sure that we do this so you can be more efficient. And that way, you have more time to do the important things in life, like forcing your cat to use a tiny computer or something like ice fishing. So as Jira grows and grows farther inside of your organization, you see it expand to more and more teams. And as it expands to more and more teams, it becomes mission critical as the entire organization uses it, as the entire enterprise adopts it. And at this point in time, it means that administration and integration and scale become really important for your Jira environment. And as a result of a lot of the feedback from folks like you at Summit last year, we launched Jira Enterprise specifically to address the needs of our enterprise customers. Now, we've been building enterprise features in Jira for quite a while, but Jira Enterprise represents a new commitment from us that we want to serve this audience and your specific needs that you have with large Jira instances. So with all of these teams, of course, that means lots and lots of users. So just out of curiosity, how many of you here today have over 1,000 users in one Jira installation. Okay, that looks like a pretty significant portion. How about over 10,000? We have any 10,000 club members? All right, right on. Several folks, it looks like maybe 20 folks with over 10,000 users. So that's the exact reason that we introduced LDAP support in Jira all the way back in 4.2. But we've been evolving it beyond simple authentication to actually being allowing you to do full user management, to supporting hierarchical groups, and now even using Jira as a crowd server to serve other applications. But any of those folks who've actually configured LDAP with any application before can tell you that, while it's a standard, that doesn't necessarily mean every LDAP configuration is alike. In fact, they're more like snowflakes where no two are alike, which can actually make it very difficult to set up an LDAP configuration. And so in Jira 5, we actually introduced Ldap Troubleshooting that actually lets you troubleshoot your LDAP configuration and even pinpoint problems that may occur with individual users in your directory. So it takes you through essentially every single step in that process, from testing the basic connection, to retrieving a user, to retrieving that user's groups, to basically grabbing one of those groups, pulling all of the members of that particular group, and then finally actually testing authentication for that user itself. Now, you probably haven't seen a mention of Ldap Troubleshooting in the press or in the headlines. Ldap Troubleshooting, I guess it really isn't very sexy. But it's one of those things that you've told us about matter the most to you. I've talked a lot earlier in this presentation about some of the new exciting features in Jira like inline edit, and Scott talked about a lot of the great new features in Jira in the keynote as well. But the reason that we keep investing in features that are for administrators, like Ldap Troubleshooting, is because you've told us it's the most important things for you on a daily basis as Jira administrators. And so I want to say, please keep the feedback coming, because your feedback does matter, and it does inform what we do on a daily basis. Another example of this is actually dashboards and filters, which are really important objects in Jira. They're used by a large number of people, but they're owned in Jira by one single person. So prior to Jira 5, if you had a user actually leave your organization or leave your team, but they owned a shared filter or dashboard, they actually couldn't be removed from Jira. You had to go in and log in as that user and remove the sharing of that dashboard and then recreate the dashboard, and then you could remove that user. But in Jira 5, as part of the overall changes in the ability to administer shared filters and shared dashboards, you can now just reassign a dashboard to another user. Again, not the stuff of headlines, but it's these types of changes that we're trying to make to save you 5, and 10, and 15 minutes a day that we know make a big difference to administrators. So people also, when they think about users, they think about issues in terms of scale of a particular Jira instance. So just out of curiosity, another show of hands, how many people have over 50,000 issues in their Jira instance? All right, how about over 200,000 in a single Jira instance? Wow, a lot of hands stayed up. A lot of big instances, that's great. Well, as a lot of you probably also know, we used to recommend that at 200,000 issues, you start thinking about splitting a Jira instance. But scale in Jira is not just about issues. There are a lot of other things that can actually have a combination. And so, there are some Jira customers out there who actually have up to and over 1 million issues in a single Jira instance. But again, as I mentioned, there are other factors that can actually contribute to scale, all the different project administration objects in Jira. And so we actually reached out and worked with about 50 different customers who have 200,000 issues or more in Jira to learn more about their particular Jira configurations. And the results we found were pretty surprising. So we found one Jira customer who has over 400 individual statuses in one instance of Jira. We have another Jira customer who has 700 different issue types in their one instance of Jira. We have another customer with 1,100 individual projects in Jira, and one with 3 million different comments in one Jira instance. And my personal favorite is one customer with 2,700 custom fields. 2,700 custom fields in one Jira instance. That is 3% of the nouns in the English language. So, Webster is going to run out of custom fields pretty soon if they're not careful. And 4,500 groups in one Jira instance, and another one with well over 100,000 users. So you can see here, there's some people who scaled Jira pretty far. And Jira can scale, but we know that it's not without challenges. So why did we collect this data? It wasn't just to amuse you or to amuse me. We actually wanted to focus our performance improvements that you told us about last year were very important on real customer environments. So we collected this data, and we collected what different customer configurations look like to make sure we tuned our performance improvements at real-world customer scenarios. So what we did is we put Jira to the test at all these configurations ranging between 100,000 issues up to 1 million issues with lots of different dimensions. And as you heard in Mike's keynote yesterday, we then focused a lot of effort in 5.1 around improving the performance and the scale of a single instance of Jira. And he talked about the results where we see better throughput from 4.4 to 5.1. We see better scale where an instance that ran at a certain level with 200,000 issues in 4.4 actually performs at that same level with 500,000 issues in Jira 5.1. And that 5.1 is better than 4.4 at every point along that scale. But in doing so, Jira actually uses less resources than before. So it uses less memory while it's performing our benchmarks, and it spends less time garbage collecting. So you haven't had to throw twice as much memory. It's the same instances in Jira 5.1 is performing much, much better than 4. So all of these tests were run at configurations at around 200,000 issues. And so what does this all mean? Well, it means that I'm excited to announce the end of the 200,000 issue limit in Jira. So for all of you who said last year, Brian, we have a performance problem, you just clapped for yourself because you're the ones who made a big difference in making sure this got our attention and that we invested in performance. And we're going to keep investing in performance. But rather than introduce another number, what we want to do is we want to give you as much information and as many tools as possible so you can make the right decision around how you should configure and scale your own particular Jira instance. You may ask, actually, first, how do we actually generate this data? How do we actually do all these performance tests? Well, we actually built a test harness that I'll talk about. And as part of our work on our test harness, we actually looked at the impact on Jira configuration, so project administration, things like how many projects you have, things like how many custom fields you have, to actually see which had a real performance impact. And early on, we've seen some very clear results. There are a certain number of things in Jira, like the number of users, the number of projects, the number of issue types, and the number of workflows that don't appear to have much of an impact on Jira performance at all. However, there are some things that as you capacity plan, as you think about growing Jira in your organization, that do have an impact on Jira performance, like the number of issues, like the number of concurrent users, like the number of custom fields in your instance, and the number of permissions. And we want to make sure that we have that information for you, again, so as you grow your Jira instance, and so as it evolves over time, you can keep these things in mind as you decide how you want to scale Jira. So with our test harness, we built something that basically crams as many issues, as many projects, as many workflows, all those different dimensions into a single Jira instance. And a lot of you have actually told me in the past that you want to look ahead a few years. You don't just want to test Jira the way it exists for your company today. You want to see what Jira would look like in 2 or 3 years at the rate you're growing issues as new teams are coming on. And so in Atlassian fashion, we not only want to make this information available to you, we want to make our technology available to you. And so we've actually released the Jira data generator on the Atlassian marketplace. So you can download it, and you can actually create a Jira instance of any size and scale that matches what you think your Jira instance might be like in the future. So you can test against your company's storage, your company's database, your company's network, your company's hardware. So you can really and more effectively capacity plan for what Jira might look like for you in the future. But as well, we also want to make all those performance scripts that we developed to actually test Jira available to you as well. So we've developed a whole new suite of load tests that we're using on Jira, and they run on something called the Grinder. Sounds really tough. But it's an open source Java load testing framework. And so that's available on SourceForge. But we're going to make all of our performance scripts available to you as well, so you can run them against your Jira instance and see what your results are like as well. And finally, what we use on a daily basis to actually test Jira is New Relic. And it's actually not my job at all as the Jira product manager to mention any of our sponsors. This just happens to be who we've been using for a while to actually test Jira on a daily basis. The whole goal of these is we want to make sure that everything that we have access to, that you have access to for your Jira instance. So there's no secrets or tricks of the trade that only the Jira team has. We want to make sure our customers can see the exact same things that we do and be as transparent as possible. But again, not just the tools, but the information is what we want to make available to you. And so there's now an enterprise resources page that will be the homepage not just for Jira, but for all Atlassian products under the Atlassian Enterprise banner at the shortened URL, atlss.in. We go big. is the shortened URL, and that's going to be on confluence.atlassian.com. And watch this page because you're going to see us add a number of resources specifically for large enterprise customers over time. What's already there today is a general approach to how you scale Jira, a paper on tuning garbage collection, another one on how you tune your database connections with Jira. And in Jira 5.1, actually in product, we have the ability to see the number of database connections that you're using along with the number of read writes to the database that Jira is performing. So along with the information, we're even making Jira more and more transparent about the resources that we're using. And there are other resources on the page, as well as how you can set up a staging server for your Jira environment. One around failover for Jira. And we're not going to stop there. We're going to keep adding more. So one that a couple of you have actually talked to me about in the past is, hey, we noticed that when you upgrade jira.atlassian.com or support.atlassian.com, it takes like 1/5 or 1/10 of the time that it takes us to upgrade our Jira instance. So we want to make sure you have all the best practices and insights and secrets that we use to upgrade our Jira instances for your production environments as well. So definitely check this out. Watch that page because we'll be adding new resources to it over time. Lots of good stuff there. And Claudio's got a great talk this afternoon if you want to actually hear how one customer did it. Claudio's got about 3,000 users, 1,800 who are concurrent at any particular time, so a pretty heavy load Jira environment. And so you can actually see and hear his personal tips and tricks on how they scaled their Jira instance. So scale actually can be a good thing as well, too. So along with all those Jira issues that Jira is storing, Jira stores the complete change history with each one of those issues. And that change history is actually a huge wealth of information that you can actually use to get insights into how to actually improve the performance of your team. So that information, it's basically a gold mine, but we've tried to make it really easy to get to with the introduction of the ability to search the Jira change history over the last several Jira releases. And the whole goal here is that we want to give you the ability to take these insights and have more effective and productive teams in your environment. So let me be really specific here. Like, are you ever leaders in your organization who are looking for ways to improve their teams, they're looking for recommendations, and they actually want the data to back those recommendations up? That's exactly what the Jira Search change history is for. In the Jira team, we're actually constantly looking for ways to optimize, but not just technically, process as well. So we look at the last release, we look at the last month, we look at the last iteration, we look at the last week, trying to find ways where we can better ourselves by comparing and contrasting sometimes teams and sometimes individuals so we can all learn. A little bit like what Jeff talked about in terms of that healthy competition. And so the search change history allows you to search for any changes to an issue, who it was changed by, when those changes occurred, and specific changes within that particular issue. And because it's part of the Jira query language, you can actually use it in gadgets and reports and filters, so you can create dashboards just like this one. This is actually one from the Jira team itself. So you can answer questions like, how many issues did each team inside of the Jira dev team move from iteration 10 to iteration 11? It's a really nice way of saying how many issues did they commit to doing that they didn't actually finish. That's phrased in a very pejorative product manager sort of way. Or we can ask, how many issues were rejected by the QA team over the course of a release by team? So it looks like, unfortunately, the A team and the engine room team won this particular dubious honor of having the most issues rejected by QA during a particular release. But this lets us know, hey, what is one team doing better than another that we can actually use and borrow? And we have a lot of healthy competition inside of Atlassian where Jira is learning from Confluence and Confluence is learning from Jira. And these sorts of things in your organization, I think, can really provide a lot of cross-pollination around best practices and improvement. I think the Jira Search change history is actually one of the most overlooked features over the last 3 releases. We haven't promoted it a lot, but for those of you who use JQL on a daily basis, for teams who like to use dashboards, I think it's a huge way to take those insights and actually develop higher performing teams in your organization. And Tony's got a lightning talk this afternoon. So definitely check his talk out if you're interested in more about how to practically use searching the change history in Jira. That's a good one. Now, as I mentioned before, as you get bigger and bigger as an enterprise, integration becomes more and more important for you. And so if you look at Jira 5, the Jira 5 release, as Scott mentioned, it's really about building a platform for integration and letting other applications and letting you integrate to Jira. And if you look at all those plugins that actually are compatible with Jira 5, over 100 of those plugins are actually specifically for application integration. So there are more packaged integrations to Jira than ever before that come out of the box that you can just immediately use in your Jira environment. Also, a big part of that was the introduction of the REST API, where you can actually do an integration to Jira without actually needing a plugin at all. And so you can integrate an application to Jira entirely through remote APIs. But there's an additional benefit to the REST API, which is that it's actually really easy for you to use. So just a curl script, a one-line curl script, and a text file, you can actually create issues, modify issues, query issues from Jira. So it's one of the easiest ways to integrate. And if you want to go a little further and not just create or modify issues, you can actually create activity stream entries. It's just another REST API call. You saw Scott's demo of the remote issue links and how people have built integrations to cloud storage providers like Dropbox and Box and Google Documents and all the CRM providers. Well, they did that, a lot of them using the REST API. And so you can use that same REST API to create remote issue links as well, too. And the REST API, just like the Java stable API that we introduced in Jira 5, well, it's stable. And that means that if you build an integration to Jira 5, that integration will be forwards compatible with Jira 5.1, 5.2, and so on. So the stable REST API is really important. Now, how many of you actually knew about the stable Java API in Jira 5? I don't think we made enough noise about this. And so how many of you actually develop or have plugins developed for just your Jira instance? So you have custom plugins that only run on your Jira instance. Yeah, really common. I talked to a lot of folks yesterday. You've done some wizardry with Jira with some very specific things in custom plugins, and that's great. That's why we built the platform to be that extensible. But for all of you who have custom plugins on your instance, definitely take a look at the Jira stable Java API. Because again, like the REST API, it means that if you build something on the stable API, it will be forwards binary compatible with Jira 5.1 and 5.2 and so on, and it'll make your future upgrades a lot easier. So there's actually a tool to help you out with that, and if you go to checkup.atlassian.com, you can actually upload any plugin, and it will tell you how compatible it is with any Atlassian release. And so you can actually see, compared to, let's say, Jira 5.0, what methods in your plugin are deprecated, meaning, hey, we may change those. In fact, we will be changing those in a future version of Jira. Which ones are private, meaning you can still get access to them, but we may be changing them soon in a current release. Or which ones are valid, and which one are stable, and which one will continue to remain the same in 5.1, 5.2, and so on. So if any of you have custom plugins, this is one great takeaway, which is take a look at the Jira stable API for Java and make sure that the next time you migrate a plugin to Jira, a future version, or you're building a new plugin, try to use the Jira stable API as much as possible, because it's really going to save you a lot of pain for upgrades in the future. So finally, as Jira is growing more and more, that final stage where it's not only grown inside of an organization, but it may have jumped organizational boundaries, it may have jumped geographic boundaries, it may have gone beyond business units. You see sometimes many customers actually treating Jira like a standard. And in that case, they start to actually deploy Jira and have a number of Jira instances inside of their organization. So why do customers deploy multiple instances of Jira? Well, I've gotten to talk to a number of them, and there's quite a few reasons. One is you may actually have a private version of Jira. It sits inside of your corporate firewall, your employees use it, your teams use it on a daily basis. But you may have another instance of Jira that sits outside your corporate firewall that you use to connect with business partners or customers or clients. Another reason is actually that you're a geographically distributed organization. Maybe you actually grew by acquisition, so you've had multiple Jira instances for a while in different geographies. Or maybe different instances of Jira grew up in different places. I actually talked to a customer yesterday who said, we've started to really roll out Jira, and as we rolled it out, we found Jira under a bunch of different desks across the organization. So you may have multiple Jira instances just because multiple teams started using it independently. Or finally, you may actually deploy multiple Jira instances because you want different configurations, you want different settings, you want different plugins on each Jira instance, and you want individual teams to have their own control. And of course, you may deploy multiple Jira instances because of scale. You've gotten to a certain threshold and you want to deploy multiple Jira instances. And so you've told us, hey, we need better capabilities, we need better end-user support, we need better features that work across multiple Jira instances. Well, as we mentioned before, user management is something that you can already use across multiple Jira instances, whether that's using an Ldap server, whether that's using Crowd for multiple Atlassian applications, or whether that's even using Jira as a crowd server. But something not everyone knows is actually that you can include a gadget from one Jira instance in the dashboard for another Jira instance. So you could actually build a dashboard which has gadgets from the 4 or 5 or 6 Jira instances that you have, and have a roll-up reporting dashboard that uses gadgets from any Jira instance that's application linked to each other. And in Jira 5, we've actually allowed you to aggregate activity streams across multiple Jira instances. So here, for example, we've got 4 different Jira instances. One's similar to what we have at Atlassian, which is our corporate project tracking server, where we have finance and HR projects in that server. We have another one that actually is our customer support system, like support.atlassian.com. We've got another one that's in our Asia Pacific development headquarters, and another Jira instance that we actually work with partners on. And here, I'm just building an activity stream gadget for my personal dashboard, because there are 4 projects that I work in, but they're on 4 different Jira servers. So I simply select those instances and filter it according to the events that I want to see. And now I've built an integrated activity stream across multiple Jira instances that shows me everything that I care about in my organization. You also may have the case where you have an issue in one instance of Jira that actually relates to another issue in another instance of Jira. So for example, you're probably all familiar with our public issue tracker, jira.atlassian.com. And when we start to work on one of those issues that's been raised by you, a customer, we actually work on it in our private instance of Jira that's inside the firewall. We call it JDog because that's our dog fooding instance, and we're always running the latest code. And rather than copying that issue from and all the text and all the details into our local Jira instance, what we really want to do is we just want to link back to the original customer issue so we have all that same context and we can watch the active discussion as it plays out on jira.atlassian.com to make sure we're reacting to those customer comments. So what we really want is Jira issue links, but we want them to work across Jira instances. So let's take a look at another example. We've got a report where we have an issue where we're seeing server performance problems at very high server room temperatures. And I want to make sure that our developer has, again, all the context of all the other issues that are related to this one. In fact, there's a purchase order out there because we're going to need to buy some special hardware that can even perform at this temperature. And I just looked at that purchase order, but it was on another Jira instance. And so I know it's on our corporate project server. And here you see all the Jira instances that are application linked automatically in the link dropdown. And because I was just on that server, I see all the issues in my history of what I was looking at, not on this Jira instance, but on another Jira instance. And so it's really easy for me to link that issue in, despite the fact that I'm working across 2 different Jira instances. And there I have it, a Jira issue link looking and behaving the same as if it was a local link in Jira, but it's actually a remote Jira instance. Now I actually want to link in the original customer support ticket, so the customer who raised it. Now, unfortunately, I've never seen that ticket before, so it's not in my history, but I'm going to search for it. I remember it had something to do with heat, so I'm going to search for hot, but no luck. But now I can actually use the Jira query language with full autocomplete of the terms on the remote Jira server. So these are all the projects, and these are all the terms that are applicable in JQL for that remote Jira instance. And so I can search for issues that are not even on the issue, not even on the instance that I'm on right now, and I can easily link that in to my local Jira instance. So now I've got 3 different issue links on this issue, all from 3 different Jira instances. And again, I get to see the status, whether they've been updated, the strike-through notation if they've been resolved. And so I can take a single look at an issue and have a great idea of what's going on with all the related issues across multiple Jira instances. And we're going to keep investing in making it easier and easier for users to work across multiple Jira instances. Right now, there's actually a plugin on the marketplace that's called the Jira to Jira Issue Copy plugin. And right now, it's just in labs, but it allows you to basically copy an issue from one Jira instance to another Jira instance. And so again, just one example, we're going to continue investing in this particular direction. Because using multiple Jira instances, or what we call federation, that is the direction for Jira Scale in the future. Combined with, we're going to keep investing in the performance for individual instances, and we're going to make using and managing more Jira instances easier and easier. That is our direction for scale for Jira in the future. And so for you customers with multiple Jira instances, this is the direction that we're going, again, because of the feedback that you've given us, and because we believe it's the best way to scale. So talking about the future, what is the overall future for Jira? What are we going to be focusing on? Well, we want to keep helping teams grow at every phase in their development. So following on some of the changes that you've seen with create and inline edit, we want to make sure that not just new teams, but all new users in Jira have the best possible experience. And so we're going to keep working on that core experience with Jira issues. You've seen us change create, you've seen us change edit, and we're going to keep improving search, triage, and working with a list of issues. And second, as you grow farther and farther and more teams, we want to make sure that administration of more and more teams and more projects in Jira gets easier and easier. So following on the work that we started in Jira 4.4, where you have the new project summary for Jira projects in the administration section, you'll see more and more improvements about now making editing of each of those project administration objects, like workflows and like permissions, easier and easier for administrators. Now I'm going to pause for a 30-second commercial break here, because there's actually something new that's out there in beta on the marketplace as well that's called the Jira Workflow Sharing plugin. And it's something that you definitely may want to check out. It basically allows you to export a workflow from Jira and import it into another Jira instance. And so for administrators who have multiple Jira instances, or people who may want to share workflows across and actually best practices and be able to see, well, here's a help desk workflow that I use, it actually may create a great community of workflows that you can actually exchange workflows or get workflows from experts that may work in your Jira instance. So check out the Jira Workflow Sharing plugin on Marketplace. There are even some sample workflows on Marketplace that you can pull into a Jira instance today. So again, back to the future. We've talked to a lot of you who have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of old closed issues in your Jira instances. I was talking with one customer the other day where 75% of their projects are no longer active on Jira. And as a result, you've said that archiving would be really useful. And so we are starting work and will be releasing an archiving plugin for Jira in the near future. So if you're interested in archiving at all, please come talk to me or any of the Jira product managers, because we'd love your feedback and love for you to be a part of the early customer programs that are working on archiving. And finally, as I mentioned before, we're going to keep investing in the scale of individual Jira instances, but also improve the ability to manage multiple Jira instances, as that is the future for Jira Scale. But Jira is not only growing inside your organization and inside of Atlassian, it's actually growing around the world. So there are over 14,000 Jira customers worldwide in 120 different countries. And the marketplace has 400 different add-ons just for Jira alone. And the Jira community keeps growing by leaps and bounds, not only on answers.atlassian.com, but I know a lot of you are actually on the LinkedIn Jira group and other Jira communities that are outside of Atlassian, and that's great. And it seems like every day I see a new want ad for Jira expertise wanted in some different part of the world. And so I wanted to pause here and actually say thank you to everyone, because you've been a huge part of making Jira the success it has been today. And from our QA team, from our development team, from our design team, from our marketing team, from everyone, I just really wanted to say thank you, and to please keep the feedback coming, because so much of what we do on a daily basis is fueled by your comments, your feedback, your issues on jira.atlassian.com, your posts and forums, that I really want to say thank you, because it really helps shape our product. And I hope you feel like those of you here last year, that your feedback definitely made an impact on what we've been doing in the last 12 months. And I hope that you feel like you're seeing the results today. So finally, just as homework, a few takeaways. Definitely check out the release candidate of Jira 5.1 that's available now. Check out the enterprise resources and the new versions of Greenhopper, Bonfire, and Crowd. And for all you Greenhopper fans or those who are interested in Agile, definitely check into Sean's Greenhopper State of the Union talk that's later on this afternoon. So thank you so much. I really appreciate everything, and have a great rest of your summit.